Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. For today's tutorial, we're making a modern boat neck top. For this one, simple and sleek is the name of the game, and that's how we came up with this one. There's a sleek boat neck, spillover short sleeves, and that's it. Simple modern crochet goodies. Speaking of, if you're a fan of modern crochet goodies, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of modern crochet tutorials and patterns dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 220 grams of yarn, and that's 410 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. And there is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order. Enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us your favorite lip product. You can never go wrong with some good old chapstick. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 3 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, and half double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making a chain that starts 1 inch underneath our underarm down to our waist. Now I need roughly 7 inches or 18 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 30. Now that we have our chain, we're going to get started on our row 1, which is a half double crochet row. Start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then from here, yarn over and inserting our hook into that chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook. Insert with a half double crochet. So insert, yarn over, pull through for 3 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 3, and continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. We've made our way down with our row 1, leaving our last chain. Now into that last chain is going to be an increase of 2 half doubles. So starting with the yarn over, into that last chain with 1 half double, then into the same last chain with a 2nd half double crochet. Now our row 1 is complete, and we should all have 1 more stitch than chains that we made. Our following row is a slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases. So we're going to chain 1, flip our work, then put 1 back loop slip into every stitch. So finding the last stitch from our previous row, we're going to insert into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us. Then from here, we're going to yarn over and gently pull through both loops on our hook. We want to make sure that we're pulling through gently, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. Let's do that again. Into that next chain, insert into that back loop, yarn over, pull through everything. Again, back loop, yarn over, pull through everything. Continue with this to reach the end of the row. Our row 2 is now complete. From here, it is going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows, but now the half double crochet row will be within the back loops. So to get that started, let's all chain 2 and flip our work. So start with a yarn over. Insert into that first stitch's back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from us. Pull through, yarn over, pull through 3 per usual. And to complete this row together, just put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one. So we are back. Our first 1, 2, 3 rows are nearly complete. We should have all left that last stitch. So we're going to do another increase together. Yarn over, insert into that stitch's back loop, pull through 3 with 1 half double, and a 2nd half double into that same stitch's back loop. Now our row 3 is complete. Everyone's following row is going to be another back loop slip stitch row. So chain 1, flip our work, and make your way down with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So we are back. Altogether, we should have completed a total of 4 rows. Now from here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have an underarm portion that can stretch, and we do want to make sure that we're stretching it as if we're wearing it, from mid-underarm over to the corner of our underarm. And once we have that completed, I'll meet you back right after a slip stitch row so we can finish up our underarm together. Now, after my 4 rows, I am actually complete with this portion of my underarm. So the width that I have is roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters, and that is unstretched. Now, to get started on the second half of our underarm, since we shall be along the bottom, chain 2, flip our work. Put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one, and then I'll meet you back. We are back. We've made our way down with our back loop half doubles, leaving that last stitch. Into that last stitch, we're now going to do an increase of 3 half doubles. So yarn over, into that stitch's back loop, insert with 1 half double. Same last stitch's back loop with a second, and then same last stitch's back loop with a third. Now this increase row should have 2 more stitches than our previous row. We are going to need to increase into our slip stitch row as well, so how we're going to do that is start the following row with a chain 2. Our first chain is going to count as a stitch for the following row. Our second chain is going to count as our turning chain, and flip our work. So starting with the second chain from our hook, we are going to insert our hook into that back loop, yarn over, and gently pull through everything with 1 slip stitch. Now from here, continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into the rest of our stitches. We are back and our slip stitch row is completed. Now for this portion, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we now have an underarm portion that can stretch from mid-underarm over to the front of our body, so roughly around where a bra strap or a tank top strap would be. Once we have that, I will meet you back right after a half double crochet row, so along the top, and then we can work straight into the body from there. So we are back. The entirety of my underarm portion is complete. I have a total of 7 rows. My width is roughly 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters unstretched. Now from here, what we're going to do, start by making a chain that is in multiples of 3 that reaches mid-chest. So as a really quick tip, we all want to make sure that the tail end of our work is still staying at 1 inch underneath our underarm when we put this up to ourselves. If the tail end drifts down a little bit too low, that's going to make our armhole way too wide. Or if it drifts up a little bit higher than that, it's going to make our armhole a little tight, making it maybe a little uncomfortable to wear. But once we have all that figured out, we're going to make that chain. Now I needed just 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I went ahead and made a chain 6. From here, we're going to continue on with our back loop slip and back loop half double crochet rows, working our way across our chest with no increases and no decreases. So let's just get started on the following row together. Once we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch. That's our turning chain. Then we're going to slip stitch into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook with a slip stitch, because that is the following row in a row sequence. So yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. And that's it. From here, we're going to continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. Then once we reach the body portion, 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then our following row is going to be back loop half double crochet row with no increases or no decreases. Then a back loop slip stitch row, again with no increases and no decreases. We're just going to continue to repeat those 2 rows, working our way across our chest until we reach the front of our body on the other side, so roughly where that side's bra strap or tank top strap would be. Then I will meet you back right after a slip stitch row, so along the bottom, and then we can work straight into our underarm from there. We are back. I have just completed the width of my front panel. I have a total of 36 rows now. My width is roughly 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters unstretched. Now we're going to get started on the first underarm portion. So first things first, we're all going to want to make sure that we are inserting our stitch marker into the same amount of stitches as chains that we made when we got started on this portion of our front panel. So for those of you that have my numbers, so on this side I made a chain 6, so along this side, counting from the top, I inserted my stitch marker into the 6th stitch. And then from here we're going to get started on our first decrease row. So we're going to chain 2 and flip our work. Put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 3 stitches right before our stitch marker. We are back. We put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 1, 2, 3 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now we're going to do a decrease of 3 back loop half doubles. So we're all going to yarn over. Insert your hook into that 3rd to last back loop, pull through. 2nd to last back loop, pull through, then into that last back loop, Pull through for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Then yarn over and pull through all 5, and this row is complete. We're going to start our following slip stitch row with a decrease as well, so chain 1 and flip. To do our decrease of 2 back loop slip stitches, we're going to insert our hook into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, also into that next stitch's back loop. When we have these 3 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops, and that's it. Continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of rows as our second underarm portion that we did on this side. Now for everyone, we should meet back right after an odd number of rows because that's how many of these rows that we did on this side. And then I'll meet you back so we can finish up with the rest of our underarm. So the first half of my underarm portion is complete. I now have roughly 10 inches or 25 centimeters unstretched, and now we're going to finish up with our second underarm portion. So mirroring the first one that we did, we're going to do our following back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases. Then at the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2. So then we can do a decrease of 2 together. So we're back. We have just finished up our back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and have made our way back up with our following half double crochet row, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now we're going to do a decrease of 2. So we're all going to start with a yarn over. Insert our hook into that second to last back loop, pull through. Into that last back loop as well for 4 loops on our hook. Then we're all going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook, and that's it. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of rows as the first half of our first underarm portion. Once when we do, we should all end on a half double crochet row. We're all going to do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back. We are back, and the entirety of my front panel is complete. And once we have 1 panel completed, we're going to make a second one that is exactly the same. And then once we have both panels finished, I'll meet you guys back so that we can get started on the side seam. So once we have both our front and our back panel completed, next we're going to seam up the sides. So first things first, let's all make sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning the ribbing that we have for both the front and the back panel is faced outwards. And then we're going to be inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure, and now we're all going to do our outside loop slip stitch seam. So find that first stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop, first stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, then yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. Again, next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop, next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, pull through all 3, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. So we are back. Everything is all seamed up. Now we're ready to do the prep for our sleeve. So all that's going to be is just a single crochet row along our armhole that we have. So what we're going to do is start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of one of our panels. It doesn't matter which one since they look exactly the same. And then we're all going to start with 1 single crochet into every stitch. And then once we put 1 single crochet into every stitch, I'll meet you back once we reach our first side row, which should be a side half double crochet for everyone, so I can show you how we're going to be working into there. So we've just finished up putting 1 single crochet into every stitch. Now working into our side rows, we're going to be putting 2 single crochets into every side half double and 1 single crochet into the top of every side slip stitch row. So let's get this started. Everyone's first side row should be a side half double crochet row. So all we're going to do is find that top loop and insert into there with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, then into that same top loop with a second single crochet. Now into our top side slip stitch row, find that top loop, insert into there with 1 single crochet. That's pretty much it. Let's do this again. Everyone's next side row is a side half double, insert with 2 single crochets, and into the top of our next row, which is a side slip stitch row, just 1. We're going to continue doing this, making our way down until we reach our side seam. We have just single crocheted our way down. We are now at our side seam, and into the top of that side seam row, we're just going to put 1 single crochet into there as well. So pretty much the same way we've been doing it so far. So just find that top loop, and insert with a single crochet, but now we're going to be inserting our stitch marker into the top of that stitch just so we know where the middle is. Then from here we're going to basically mirror everything we did here on the other side. So continue with 2 single crochets into every side half double, 1 single crochet into every side slip, and then once we reach our stitches, 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then once we don't have any more stitches left, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back. So we are back. Our single crochet row to prep for our sleeve is completed. Now we're going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our sleeve to be. So we're all going to start by making sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into our stitch marker stitch, insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and then we're all going to start by making a chain. Now this chain can be as long or as short as you'd like the sleeve to be. I'd like for mine to be a short sleeve, so I'm going to start by making chain 5, and that's just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters. Now that I have my chain, I'm going to get started on the first row. It's going to be a half double crochet row, so block off that last chain and do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then start with a yarn over, preparing for a half double crochet, and insert our hook into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, with a half double. And this is going to be pretty simple. Continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one, and then we'll increase together. We've made our way all the way down, and we have just 1 chain left. Into that chain, we're all going to do an increase of 3 half double crochets. So yarn over, into that last chain with 1 half double crochet, into that same last chain with a second half double crochet, and then into that same last chain with a third half double crochet. And now we're all going to connect it into the base. So making sure that we're all working to the left or clockwise because the ribbing isn't reversible, we're all going to find that second stitch into the base. So here's my first available stitch, here's 1, and then here's 2. Into that second stitch, we're all going to insert with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, and pull through everything on our hook. And now our first row is completed. Now that slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch. And now our following row is going to be a back loop slip stitch row so that it can match the body. So all we're going to do is slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base. That slip stitch into the base still doesn't count as a stitch. Now we're going to flip our work. Now our slip stitch rows for the sleeve aren't going to have any increases or decreases, so simply put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, making sure that we're not counting those 2 stitches that were worked into the base. And now that our row 2 is complete, it is going to be another half double crochet row, but now within the back loops. So chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and into the last do an increase of 3 back loop half double crochets, and then I'll meet you back to connect it once more. And now that we have finished up our row 3, just to connect it into the base once more, we're going to count up 1, count up 2. Into that second stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch to connect this row, then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip into every stitch. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then I'll meet you back. Alright, so we are back. We have made our way all the way up and we don't have any more stitches left to work into. So now what we're going to do is continue on with the same rows that we've actually been doing this whole time until this reaches the outside of our arm. So everyone's next row should be a slip stitch row. So all we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work, put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, which is per usual. Then at the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one just so we can do that increase together. So we are back. We have just finished up our slip stitch row and nearly finished our half double crochet row, and these 2 rows that we just did were not connected to the piece. And now what we're going to do is just close it off with an increase of 3 back loop half double crochets. So the same way that we did these previous rows here, but I just wanted to do it with you guys just for funsies. So into that last stitch, insert with 3 back loop half double crochets. And that's basically it. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until this reaches the outside of our arm, and I'll meet you back right after a half double crochet row so we can do our middle row together. We are back. I now have a total of 21 rows, And the total width that I have, just counting from our first non-connected row to where I ended, is roughly 3 inches or 8 centimeters unstretched. Now we should have all ended right after a half double crochet row. So everyone's middle row is going to be a slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases. And then to finish up the rest of the row, we are back. I have completed the first half of my sleeve. Now I have a total of 21 rows, and counting from our first non-connected row to my last one, that's a total of 3 inches or 8 centimeters unstretched. Now my last row is a half double crochet row. So everyone's next row, which is our middle row, should be a slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases. So from where we're at, chain 1, flip our work, get that slip stitch row completed. Then to get started on the other side of our sleeve, chain 2, flip your work, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 3 stitches. Our middle row is complete, and we made our way back up with our back loop half double crochet row, leaving the last 3 stitches. So all together, yarn over, insert our hook into that third to last back loop, pull through, second to last, pull through, and last, pull through for 5 loops on our hook. Then yarn over and pull through all 5. Then from here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows for the same amount of rows that we have for this side of our sleeve that is not connected to the body portion. Now once we have that completed, which we should all end right after a back loop slip stitch row, I'll meet you back to show you how we're going to connect the rest of our sleeve to the other side of our body. We are back. The second half of our sleeve is complete. Everyone's last row should have been a back loop slip stitch row. So now we're going to do the following row, and then I'll show you how we're going to connect it at the end. So from where we're at, chain 2, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 3 stitches. Now we've made our way down to our half double crochet row, leaving the last 3 stitches. It is going to end with a decrease of 3 back loop half double crochets, but it's going to end a little bit differently than what we've normally been doing because we do need to connect it into the body as well. So what we're all going to do is yarn over. Insert our hook into that third to last back loop, pull through, into that second to last back loop, pull through, and then into that third back loop. But once we insert it into that third back loop, we're going to want to insert it into the top corner stitch of the back panel as well. So taking a look at our sleeve, we should all have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook so far. Then we're going to also insert our hook into that top corner stitch of the body panel. We're going to yarn over and pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops on our hook. Then we're going to yarn over and automatically pull through all 6 of those loops. And that's it. Now that that decrease slash connector is finished, we are going to need to connect it into the base as well. But since we would typically count up 2 stitches, but since that first stitch is occupied, just for this row, we're going to slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base. And now this row is connected. And now our following rows are going to be the same as before. A back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases. Then a back loop half double crochet row that ends on a decrease of 3 back loop half double crochets. And connecting it into the base is going to be the same way that we connected the first half of our sleeve into the base. Now when we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back so we can seam it all together. So we are back. We made our way all the way around with our sleeve, and we are actually all done. The last thing we're going to do is seam this portion, and this seam is going to be done exactly the same way as our side seam. So I'm just going to talk you guys through it, making sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up. We're all going to flip our work and then do an outside loop slip stitch seam so we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Once we finish this one, we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. We are back. Both of our sleeves are completed. Now we're going to get started on the top band. So what we're going to do is start by making sure the work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into any one of the side seams that we have, really anywhere. And then from here, all we're going to do is a single crochet row. And what we're going to do is put 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row, and then 2 single crochet into every side half double crochet row. And we're going to continue that, making our way all the way up and around. Once we slip stitch into that chain space, I will meet you back. We are back. Our single crochet row is complete, and now we're going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our top band to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 5. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So into that chain, yarn over and gently pull through everything. And since we already know how to do our slip stitches, put one slip stitch into every chain and I'll meet you back at the base. Now that we've put one slip stitch into every chain, we're going to need to slip stitch it into the base just to connect. And how that's going to work is just find that next available stitch into the base, insert in through there with a slip stitch, keeping in mind that that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch into that following stitch into the base as well. Still doesn't count as a stitch, and flip our work. Then from here, one back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. Just so we can connect it into the base together once more, at the end of this row, chain 1, flip our work and put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end. Our rows 1, 2, and 3 are nearly complete. Now we're going to slip stitch it into the base. So just like the previous row, find that next available stitch into the base, slip stitch into there, and then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, flip our work, and then put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And all we're going to do is continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, making our way all the way around, and we don't have any more stitches left to work into. I'll meet you back so we can seam it all together. We are back! We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now all we're going to do is seam it up, and this is going to be the same seam as our sleeve and for our sides. So just go ahead and do that outside loop slip stitch seam, since we already know how to do that. Do a chain up 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back so we can finish up with our bottom band. So getting started on our bottom band, all we're going to do is make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom of our piece and do a single crochet row. Now that single crochet row is going to be the same way that we did the top band. So 2 single crochets into every side half double, 1 single crochet into every side slip. Make your way all the way around and slip stitch into that chain space. Now as a really quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So once when it's completed, try our piece on just to make sure that it's not fitting too tightly. But if it is, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's a little bit too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip. So we are back. We have just made our way all the way around with our single crochet row. Now from here, all we're going to do is basically repeat everything that we did for the top band. So once when we have slip stitched into that chain space, we're all going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our bottom band to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 8. Then from there, just continue to do our back loop slip stitch rows the same exact way that we did the top band, with no increases and no decreases, making our way all the way around. And when we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet y'all back. We are back. We have just finished up our bottom band, and now the last thing we're going to have to do is just seam it all together. But this is the same seam as we have done for everything else pretty much so far, so we're just going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, then do our outside loop slip stitch seam. When we don't have any more stitches left, do a chain up 1 and cut, and then we're done. The last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope y'all enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch y'all in the next one. Bye!